Hello. Those of you who are here regularly are now thinking, oh God, the puff's back. Yes. The theme is first time. And if we're honest with ourselves, when we hear the phrase first time, we all think about first time you had sex. That's what the phrase conjures up, isn't it? Well, my true story this evening is not about the first 2 times I lost my virginity. Now, I know how you think. I come here often. Some of you are thinking, what does he mean? 2 times he lost his virginity, because the second time he lost his virginity doesn't count under the theme of tonight as first time. And the others of you are thinking, you can't lose your virginity a second time. Well, whichever you're thinking, you are wrong. Because I lost my virginity first time with a woman, second time with a man, and they were both very different first times. Precisely. So it does count, but that's not what my story's about tonight. Actually, the second loss of virginity story is much more interesting than the first. I'll save that for another evening in Vienna. I used to have an apartment in London. Oh, I wish I'd never sold it. I used to have an apartment in Docklands in London. It was on Shadwell Basin. What a horrible name. It conjures up a picture of an old sink in the corner of an East End car park. Where do you live? Shadwell Basin. Oh, it looks out over a cracked sink. That's nice. But actually, it was a very nice dock. Redeveloped with apartments all around with balconies. The River Thames connected by a channel 500 metres away. And we had trouble with our immersion heater. My ex-partner and I, Ian, who were together at the time, needed a new water heater. And as many gay guys do, when you need a workman, you ring round to all your gay friends and ask if any of them know a good-looking one. It also helps if they're good at their job and they're good value, but those are very much the second and third criteria. The second phone call we made was to Ian's ex, Mark. And Mark recommended Lee. Lee, the plumber from Romford. Now, for those of you who don't know London, Romford is north and east of Docklands, and it is much rougher and much more Brexity. Both of which, in my book, make the straight workman much sexier. And that's a constant contradiction and problem for me. As a left-wing gay man, why are the fascists always so dishy? But Lee was no fascist. But Mark was as good as his word. Lee was good-looking, good at his job, good value. He was also gay-friendly and willing to talk cock. Talking cock is what me and many gay guys have as our favourite topic of conversation. And it covers any man-on-man action. And Lee was perfectly happy if any of his gay customers happened to raise the subject. So we thanked Mark profusely, not only for recommending Lee, but for training him so well for other gay customers. Now, I run my own company, so it's easy for me to be at home if we need any jobs done. My partner, Ian, is a dentist. My ex-partner is a dentist. At that point, he wanted to cancel his patients so he could stay home as well. Sadly, there were too many to cancel, so I reassured him that I would be able to handle Lee. All on my own. Mark, however, reassured us, insisted that there was no way on God's earth that Lee could be turned. And that I shouldn't even try. I know what you're like, Mark scolded. And we don't want to lose a good cheap plumber because you proposition him. So I promised to behave myself. So Lee turns up Wednesday morning, bright and early. And Mark was right. He was gorgeous. Thick black hair, tall, not slim, but not yet overweight. You know that look that in 10 years I'm going to have big man boobs, a belly and a huge ass, but at the moment I'm sexy as hell. The sort of look that workmen who don't work out have in their early 30s. So we felt we'd hit the jackpot. And Lee explained this was going to be a big job. We had to drain a water tank, cut the pipes and the cables, take it out, fit a new one, fit the heating element, reconnect pipes, cables, refill the tank. This was going to take ages. Yes! I had hours with Lee. And as the tank was slowly draining, Lee went out onto the balcony to look over Shadwell Basin and have a cigarette. He smoked a lot, which I also find very sexy in a straight workman. I did the calculation. Passive smoking with a long chat with Lee on the balcony takes 10 minutes off my life. Totally worth it. So I made him his coffee with 3 sugars, not sexy, and went out onto the balcony. And in that very direct way that some working class guys have of getting straight to the point, he launched straight in with, "You gay guys are so fucking lucky." Well, I mean, I agree with him. I consider myself very lucky being gay on many, many counts, but I didn't know which, if any, of the things that I thought was lucky were the things that he was jealous about. So I said, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Yeah. The first time Mark told me about them gay saunas, I thought, they sound amazing." I liked where this was going. And technically, he raised the subject, so if anything happened, I didn't proposition him, so I wasn't breaking my promise to Mark. I said, oh yes. He said, "Yeah." He goes, "Imagine, you guys, you pay 10, 15 quid, you go into this place, full of fit guys, and you play around, and you can shag a few of them, or they might shag you, no questions asked, and then you go home." And I was trying to imagine, what would it be like if there was a place like that for straight guys? Where I could pay 10 quid and go in, and it's full of fit women who are walking around with just a towel, all naked, and they let me touch them, and they touch me, and I could play with some of them, and I could shag them, either in a cabin or in groups, and no questions asked, and they wouldn't want to know my name, and I wouldn't have to take them on dates, and I wouldn't have to take them out for dinner, and they wouldn't say, like my wife, for 2 months she doesn't fancy sex. And then I can just go home afterwards. You're so fucking lucky, you've got that already. And as he was describing it, I had a very different first-time experience, because the picture that he painted to me brought up a very different picture in my mind that I'd never had before. And that was the picture of my dog, Harvey, when I take him to the park. And I take him on the leash, and if there are lots of other dogs around, I let him off the leash, and he makes a beeline straight for another dog. And it doesn't matter if it's a male or a female dog. And he's straight in there with his nose, sniffing and licking the nether regions. And you can just see he's going, "Oh, yeah, nice, right downstairs here. Oh, she's on heat, maybe I'll get a shag." And he's up already. Front paws on the back, and he's away. And if she's not interested, and she's not bothered, she might just sort of slowly walk away, and he's trying to keep up on his back leg. And if she is bothered, she might start running away, in which case he doesn't have a hope, and he falls off. Or if she's really bothered, she might turn round and bark at him or bite him. Whichever of those happens, when he's finished, he'll start on another one. Not bothered at all. And it might be a male dog, and so he'll try and mount that one. And apparently, male on male dogs, it's a status game, power thing. And if he manages to shag a male dog, that makes him the superior dog, and the other dog feels inferior. Sort of like, you know, when a bloke drives around to his friend's house in his new BMW because he knows his mate's got a Skoda. Or he casually mentions what he earns because he knows the friend earns only half that. And I thought, bloody hell, us gay guys that goes to those clubs and saunas, we like the dogs in the park. And that's not a criticism, that's just an observation, because it made me feel, well, do you know what? This is obviously quite natural behaviour. I mean, you know, just like the dogs, we'll wander around the club or the sauna. If someone's not interested, they might shut the door of the cabin in your face. And, oh, never mind, there's plenty more along the corridor, and sooner or later you'll get invited in, and you don't mind who watches, or if you do, you go somewhere private. But I thought, we're just like the dogs in the park, and what's wrong with that? And then I looked over at Lee, and he was looking rather depressed. And he lit another cigarette. I told you he smokes a lot. And he said, anyway, it wouldn't matter if there were places for straight guys like that, because my wife Becky, she'd never allow it anyway. She'd kill me. She'd leave me. No, she'd murder me first, and then she'd leave me. So it's, you know, it's academic whether there are places like that or not. And I said, Lee, I don't know how to tell you this. There are places like that where straight guys can go. Some gay saunas have bisexual nights. Sometimes only once a month, sometimes once a week. In Paris, there's a full-time bisexual sauna. And on these bisexual nights, guys go with their wives, their girlfriends, and they might play with other men or other women, or in combination, or just with another couple, or in groups. And he said, don't tell me that! I couldn't even mention this to Becky, because if she knew I knew about places like that, she'd be worried forever that I might be going there behind her back. Two years after I met Lee, Mark had become very good friends with him. And Lee and Becky would go round to Mark's place for dinner, and he would go to their place in Romford. He's very brave. And I told you that Lee smokes a lot. 2 years after I met him, he developed lung cancer. And it developed very quickly. And Mark used to go and visit him in hospital. And on one visit, Mark found himself alone with Lee in the hospital room. And Lee said to him, here, Mark, you can tell that mate of yours, Turan, if I beat this, I'm going to ask Becky if she'll come to one of them bisexual nights with me. Well, there's a first time for everything, isn't there? Lee never made it to bisexual night. But I think if he'd ever asked Becky, she'd have said no. Even if it was his dying wish. Some asks are just too big, aren't they? But you know what? She was so good to him in his final years, I'm not sure he missed out on that much. And anyway, the sort of loving that he got in his last few months, that's not the sort of loving you can find very easily in a sauna, whatever night you go. Or in a park.